Watergate Building in Washington. This is Hotline TV. Now here are Hotline Editors Chuck Todd and John Mercurio.
Hi everyone, I'm John Mercurio, and we've got a very special guest today on Hotline TV. Chuck Todd is away, and sitting in is our TV editor, Emily Goodin. Welcome, Emily Goodin.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Emily, it's been a little more than a week since Katie Couric took over at CBS News, and we're dying to know from you, how's she doing?
Not too bad so far. The ratings have gone down a little, but that was expected. What I'm curious to see is how she does on, say, like an election night or a night of a national tragedy. Will viewers go to her? Will they go to one of the more established anchors?
Right. I mean, the difference between actually just sitting in front, as you now know, sitting in front of a television camera, just reading off of a teleprompter is not that hard for 22 minutes a night. I think you're right. I think it's really going to be interesting to see what she does on an election night or breaking news.
Exactly.
And to see over the long term how she sort of runs this news department that she's supposed to be in charge of. What are your predictions? A year from today, where is Katie Couric?
Second place.
Second place. Interesting.
Second place.
Above?
Above ABC, but still below Brian Williams.
Interesting. All right.
Remember, ABC had a lot of trouble with their anchor transition, so I think that might hurt them.
And are you still upset about not getting the job yourself?
I'm very upset.
I'm
launching a campaign.
The bitterness
It's
is
still there. So, John, you saw Dick Cheney sit down with Tim Russert this weekend on NBC's Meet the Press.
I did.
Do you think Cheney's self-deprecating humor did anything to better his standing in the country?
You know, I don't even think it matters at this point. I mean, with no disrespect intended to you, I think that's a silly question. I don't even think that the Bush administration or this vice president, and no disrespect intended to the vice president himself, I don't think they're even trying at this point to try to boost his standing among the people. I think he views himself as a functionary within sort of a prominent and influential functionary, but not someone who needs to be viewed outside of the Republican base in a positive way. That said, I think that, I think the best way for him to do that, if he's trying to, is through self-deprecating humor, and that's what he always seems to rely on.
I noticed he kind of seemed kind of blasé, like, yeah, I'm here, I didn't really have to be, but I'm humoring you type thing.
Right, and I think we've seen that over the past couple of years as his poll numbers remain below 40%, in some cases below 30%. In an election year, in a general election campaign cycle, he's not really anyone that Republicans or Democrats, or the Republicans would turn to. Democrats, of course, will continue to use him.
Do you think his poll numbers would go up if he had actually shot Russert?
If he had actually shot Russert, that's an interesting question I hadn't considered. Briefly, there's a brief blip, but I think they'd eventually go back down. Finally, last week, former members of the Clinton administration were up in arms over an ABC News documentary that they said went over the line, laying blame for September 11th at their feet. You saw it, Emily. Were their complaints justified?
You know, I don't think they were, now that we've seen the edited version and they had all these disclaimers, they had all these warnings, there were so many news stories. You kind of took it with a grain of salt, and you were skeptical the entire time you were watching it.
Was this the equivalent of the Rathergate, of the Memogate with the 60 Minutes episode, or was this more like Showtime with the Reagans?
It was more like the Showtime with the Reagans. And also, that documentary crammed so much information into 5 hours, which sounds like a lot of time, but when you think about it, it was covering a 15-year period. It went so fast, it was hard to keep track of. I mean, it was information overload.
I've got it on TiVo. I'll watch it later.
Excellent.
That does it for today's Hotline TV. Join us tomorrow when we talk about the latest polls out there, including some very bad news for George Allen. Until then, I'm John Mercurio.
And I'm Emily Goodin. We'll see you next time on Hotline TV.